Hello everybody, welcome. My name is TheMattamew. This is TheMattamew Reviews, and today we are talking about Thor Love and Thunder.
Don't get up, everyone.
12 seconds later.
Thor Love and Thunder is the fourth Thor film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starring Chris Hemsworth as Thor, and the continuation of the character storyline following the events of Avengers Endgame.
Perhaps I treated you too harshly.
This film was written and directed by Thor veteran Taika Waititi, who previously directed Thor Ragnarok.
Ultimately, this film is about Thor Ragnarok.
In Thor Love and Thunder, we follow Thor, who is trying to find his true place in the universe, but not long after losing his beer belly, Gorr the God Butcher, portrayed by Christian Bale, attempts to make good on a promise to kill all gods. Now I'm going to try and make this review a little quick for you guys, so I'm going to go straight into the things that I liked, and the first thing that I got to say that I liked was the dynamic between Jane and Thor. I really like the chemistry between these two, even dating back to the first film, and obviously in the sequels we got a lot less of Jane, so we get to really pick up where we kind of left off. However, it's a little bit more than that because we also get to see some moments that happened in between that we never really got to witness. Chris Hemsworth and Natalie Portman work great together to really sell you the idea that Thor and Jane have this really strong connection and bond to each other that basically ties them together forever. My second favorite thing, which is probably going to be the most divisive part of this video, is I really enjoyed the comedy in this film. I really feel like it added something different. Obviously, a lot of people mentioned this with Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok felt like a different Marvel Cinematic Universe film than previous iterations. This one kind of 1,000 folds it. There's a lot of comedy, and so for some people, I could see how it could really put them off and say, wow, you're making Thor a buffoon. You're making this whole storyline that's very serious. You're taking it and you're making a mockery of it. Me personally, I feel like with a lot of more, I guess you could use the word traumatic experiences, I feel like comedy tends to add a lightness to it and makes it more digestible for most audiences. I found myself enjoying a lot of the moments, and I gotta say, comedy was pretty good. The third thing that I would have to say that I like is Taika Waititi is such a visual director. His visual style with Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder are absolutely outside of the realm of most of these Marvel Cinematic Universe films. With the amount of colors, the set pieces, and all the interactions that the characters are having with the world itself, it's just honestly just a breath of fresh air to see something that's different than most of the films that we've been seeing recently. The main thing I will say about that, though, is even though I love the visuals, the VFX definitely holds it back a little bit. Now, while the visual effects are nothing crazy bad, like The Mummy Returns or anything like that, I will say that the visual effects are kind of hindered by the fact that audiences have been watching films like this now for decades. We've been seeing superheroes on screen, and what we are starting to notice as audiences is when a character is directly and blatantly right in front of a green screen, or when they're in an environment that is definitely not what is visually being represented by the VFX. So audiences are picking up on that kind of thing, and they're noticing that there's probably a little bit less of a time frame with the visual effects being completed, and so they're just not as stunning as some other films. Now, I won't knock the whole film for that because the visuals that they were able to represent were absolutely beautiful, and I really enjoyed myself. Now, starting with some of the things that I definitely didn't like, I'm going to have to start with something so that way you guys are aware. If any of you were anticipating to see Gorr the God Butcher a significant amount of time throughout this film, you might be a little bit disappointed, as I was, because he is really not in the film at all. And in fact, with a name like Gorr the God Butcher, we barely see him butcher any gods. Now, that's not to take anything away from Christian Bale. Obviously, the man is a fantastic actor. But when you have a character that's this interesting and you don't utilize them to their full potential and you don't really even show them that much, how could you really appreciate the character? Now, the next thing that I would say that I didn't like that much is Thor. I mean, Thor, who is the star of this film, we've really seen a departure from what this character is really intended to be. We saw this really intelligent and strong hero starting from the beginning, and now he's kind of become more of a meathead himbo kind of thing where he's not really that intelligent, but he's able to be consistent with his morals, so that's kind of what benefits him. But Thor is kind of just becoming a dummy. I hate to say it. And the last thing that I gotta say that I didn't like about this film is the issue that I've been having with Phase 4 this entire time, which is that it really feels as though there's not a specific direction that the films are trying to lead you to go into. We kind of have them structuring the Young Avengers. We kind of have them structuring Secret Wars. We kind of have them structuring a few different things and a few different villains that could pop up here and there. But I feel like there's not much consistency like we had in Phase 1 when we were leading up to the Avengers teaming up. I kind of feel like we don't really know where all these characters are going, and if you're going to make this thing a universe, then we really should feel like they're connected, but all these films that have been coming out within the past 2 years, they feel very separate. Now, if I could ask for anything more within this film, I would have asked for them to spend a little bit more time on the visual effects, and I think that they would have been spot on. If I had to choose anything that I wanted less in this film of, I think it would just be the amount of characters that we kind of focused on. I really feel like if this was a Thor and Jane story and not anybody else mixed in between and then obviously them versus a bad guy, I think we really would have had a nice story. I feel like there's a couple characters that really didn't need to be in there other than just a few chuckles. Now, one thing I like to grade my movies on is if I plan on rewatching it later down the line. This film, in my opinion, is not a film that most people would probably want to rewatch unless it's maybe in the background. I feel this film is not terrible, but at the end of the day, it's just not what we expect from our Marvel films. Now, that doesn't make it not fun. There's a lot of fun moments to enjoy, and that's why I feel like as a background film, you might be able to just look and be like, oh yeah, I love that moment. But other than that, sitting down and watching it over and over again, all that's going to have people do is really analyze and pick apart the things that they really didn't like and then identifying them across the entire film. Now, what I have here are some notes that I'm going to be utilizing to grade the film itself. What I have is some criteria in which I feel are vital to films, and then I have graded them 1 out of 10. When it comes to cinematography, I gave this film an 8. I really feel like the visuals were fantastic. I love the way that it was shot. The only thing is that, like I had mentioned earlier, the visual effects kind of get in the way of that. Now, the next category is direction, and I gave that an 8 out of 10. I really love Taika Waititi, and I feel like his visual style really works well with the Thor universe. Again, it's just the way that he writes this project I feel like is off-putting to most people. The next section I have is editing, and I gave that a 7 out of 10. The reason being is because I feel like the pacing was okay in the film. However, there are definitely some parts that could have been trimmed up so that way you could reduce the time a little bit. And also, there are some scenes that really could have breathed a little bit more rather than cutting over and over and over again. These fast cuts nowadays in these films kind of just aggravating. Now, this next category is visual effects. I gave this portion a 6 out of 10. Reason being is because the visual effects are obviously not that great. They could have been much better. However, the visuals that they were trying to portray and that they did get across were absolutely stunning, and so I kind of just evened it out a little bit. The next section is the characters. I gave that category a 7 because I really liked some of the characters. I really liked some of the things that were going on with some of the characters and the dynamics that they had. However, there were, again, just a couple characters I feel like weren't really that necessary. Now, the next category I graded a little harshly, and it's the story category. I gave it a 5 out of 10, not because the story itself is bad, but because of the fact that they're adapting a comic that is extremely heartbreaking, and I felt like this tone of the film did not work with what they were trying to adapt. I really wish that we would have gotten a separate, more serious toned film with this plotline. And now for the last section, I graded the score and the soundtrack. I gave it a 7, mainly because there was some really good tracks that worked really well with scenes in this film, but nothing necessarily special or new or different or groundbreaking. Just good, pretty good. Now, if we take all those scores and we average them, what we are going to get is a 6.85, which I'm going to be rounding up to a 6.9. This film is average, it's okay, it's fun, it's nothing terrible, it's nothing great either. I really feel like some people will have a really good time with it. Some people, though, are really gonna hate it, and I've definitely seen a lot of that online, so it's not anything that's unexpected. Honestly, though, I could probably see myself rewatching this. Again, like I mentioned, kind of just in the background, just seeing it. There are some fun moments with it that I really found myself enjoying. I feel like there are definitely moments to enjoy in this film, and so I really hope that everyone goes out and sees it, or at least gives it an opportunity when it comes out on streaming on Disney Plus. Well, that about wraps up this video, so thank you so much for enjoying. I hope you got what you needed out of this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.